Hello, friends. Something truly unexpected has happened on the front lines of this long and exhausting war. A place that for months seemed frozen in tension and silence suddenly found itself in the center of world attention. Kupiansk, a city divided by a river and a front line, a place where every street remembers the sound of shells, became the destination of an unannounced visit that no one saw coming. Cameras captured the moment only after it happened. The president of Ukraine appeared in a region that has long been considered one of the most dangerous. No one knew about this trip in advance. No official statements, no prior reports. Just a short message from the president himself. Kupiansk direction. Our soldiers achieve results for Ukraine. I thanked every unit. Kupiansk is not just another dot on the map. The city has been split, one part on the right bank, the other on the left. And for many months, the battle for control has never ceased. Reports from the Russian side claim that both parts of the city are fully under their control, while just a few kilometers south lies another settlement, Kupiansk-Uzlovi, where the fighting continues with incredible intensity. The Russian military states they already hold around 600 buildings there. I think in a few days we'll take the whole town, one of their officers says confidently. Yet, the reality on the ground tells a more complicated story. Against this backdrop, the visit of Ukraine's president to the front line is a strong and symbolic gesture. He personally greets the soldiers, shakes hands, looks them in the eyes, and those words, "Glory to Ukraine," sound heavier than ever before. They echo through trenches and burned-out buildings, reaching those who still hold the line under continuous fire. But behind this seemingly heroic scene hides something else, something deeper. A dissonance that has grown louder with every month of this war. A growing number of people who once believed in clear, simple answers are now faced with bitter questions. Among them is a man who calls himself Mikhail. He fought in Ukraine, but his story is far from what television news usually shows. Everything they show on TV is not true, he says quietly, his face hidden from the camera. I fought for Donbass. I went there to earn some quick money, but it turned out to be nothing like what they promised. His words pierce through the static of propaganda like cold air through a cracked window. If you believe everything on TV, he continues, then the front has already collapsed, Budanov has been killed twice, and the Ukrainian army has been defeated 3 times. What follows is not just a confession, it's a mirror of a disillusioned generation. People like Mikhail were drawn into the war by promises of quick pay and patriotism, only to find themselves broken, forgotten, and left behind. Friends, this is only the beginning of the story. Because what's happening behind the front lines, in hospitals, in ruined homes, and even in the streets of Moscow, will completely change how you see this conflict. So stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe, because the most revealing part is still ahead. The deeper we look into this story, the clearer it becomes that what is happening in Kupiansk is more than just another episode of war. It is a reflection of the entire system, the silence, the contradictions, and the exhaustion that have spread far beyond the front lines. While Ukrainian soldiers continue to hold their positions, defending towns and villages that have been reduced to ashes, on the other side of the front, Russian soldiers are speaking with growing bitterness about what they were promised and what they actually received. Many of them, like Mikhail, came to Ukraine for what they were told would be a quick operation, for easy money and guaranteed support. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare that no one wants to talk about openly. Mikhail's story is just one of thousands. Once a man full of certainty, now he limps through the streets of a provincial Russian town, searching for food in dumpsters, wrapped in a discarded blanket. They said we were heroes, he says, but when I came back wounded, there was nothing for me. No documents, no help. No one even asked who I was. His voice trembles not from fear, but from disbelief. Disbelief that the same state that sent him to war has turned its back on him. Local officials tell him that his registration is from another region, that his benefits can only be processed there, and that he should contact the place where he signed his contract. But I fought for the whole country, not for an oblast, he insists. I don't understand how you can fight for Russia and then be told you belong nowhere. It is not an isolated case. Across Russia, thousands of returning soldiers face the same bureaucratic labyrinth. Endless hospital visits, rejected applications, missing papers. Each one is passed from one department to another, while their families wait for support that never comes. Those who survive the battlefield often find themselves in a new kind of war, one against indifference and neglect. When you need to go to the front, everything is fast, says another veteran from Tolyatsi. They help you with documents, they collect everything for you, and you're sent off within a week. But when you return, wounded, broken, trying to get your compensation, everyone starts shifting responsibility. Meanwhile, in Moscow, life continues in its own rhythm. Traffic jams paralyze the city, with commuters complaining about endless congestion. Everything stands still, says one driver, half jokingly, half tired. We need some movement, some action. But the irony is sharp. The real movement is happening far away, where the same kind of stillness comes from fear, not boredom. There, every hour could be the last. Every step across a ruined bridge could be fatal. And yet, in the capital, people speak of wanting real energy, as if unaware that real lives are being lost daily. At the same time, in Ashgabat, something strange happened during a speech by the Russian president. His microphone suddenly went silent. The audience waited, confused, while he tried to continue speaking. The symbolism of the moment could not be missed. The leader of a country at war, standing before the world, cut off by silence. For a brief instant, it felt like an accidental metaphor for everything happening back home. A voice that can no longer be heard over the noise of its own contradictions. Yet, behind all the official words and patriotic speeches, small, seemingly insignificant details continue to reveal the truth. In cities like Saratov and Nizhny Novgorod, people post videos of broken buses, empty shelves, and rising prices. In one viral clip, a man stands at a bus stop waiting for a vehicle that arrives without a driver. "This is the decaying West," someone jokes sarcastically. But the humor quickly fades when you realize that in some Russian regions, even basic transport has become unreliable, and citizens are told to be patient while funds are redirected elsewhere. The contrast between what people see on state television and what they experience in daily life has never been sharper. On the screen, the message is triumphant. The army is advancing, the economy is strong, the world is envious. But on the streets, the reality is grim. Wounded veterans begging for food, families struggling with unpaid bills, and hospitals overcrowded with men who are told they were defending the motherland. For many, the dissonance is unbearable. And still, despite all this, the machinery of propaganda keeps turning, repeating the same words: stability, victory, greatness. The same words that once inspired pride now sound hollow, mechanical, distant. People are beginning to whisper what they used to be afraid to say aloud: that the promises are crumbling, that the sacrifices are being wasted, that the truth can no longer be hidden behind official reports. Even among those who once supported the war, there is growing fatigue, a quiet recognition that something has gone terribly wrong. But this isn't just about politics or geography. It's about people, ordinary men and women whose lives have been reshaped by decisions made far above their heads. It's about families who will never see their sons again, about children who will grow up without understanding why their fathers left and never returned. It's about a country divided not only by front lines, but by fear, by silence, by the inability to face the truth. And yet, even in this atmosphere of despair, something else is beginning to surface. Small acts of courage, fragments of honesty that break through the noise. Volunteers bringing food to veterans like Mikhail, journalists risking their safety to film what others ignore, and soldiers who quietly refuse to return to the battlefield, choosing instead to speak out. Friends, what is happening now will shape not only the future of this war, but the future of an entire region. Because the real story of Kupiansk, of Mikhail, of those nameless people struggling in the shadows, is not just about who controls the land, it's about who still dares to tell the truth. Stay with us, because in the next part we will uncover what the cameras never show: the hidden consequences of this conflict, the forgotten voices, and the growing unrest that could soon reach even the highest halls of power. Do not miss what comes next, and make sure to subscribe, because what you will hear in the final part may change how you see everything. Part 3. The final chapter of this story begins not on the battlefield, but in the quiet aftermath that follows it. In cities where lights flicker late at night, and where people speak in hushed tones about things that no one dares to say out loud. Kupiansk remains a symbol of struggle, a place where every burned building carries a story, where the smoke of conflict still lingers in the air. Yet far beyond the front lines, the consequences of this war ripple through every layer of society, from the smallest village to the halls of power in Moscow. Reports from eastern Ukraine continue to describe heavy fighting, but the real battle now takes place in the minds of those who once believed that the war had meaning. Ukrainian units, hardened and exhausted, continue to resist, reclaiming small but vital areas inch by inch. Their determination has become legendary, but their losses remain immense. The soldiers who stood with the president during his surprise visit now return to positions where the sound of artillery never stops. Some will never come back. Others, when they do, will carry the invisible scars that no medal can heal. Meanwhile, in Russia, the silence grows heavier. The state continues to broadcast its messages of confidence, speeches about patriotism, unity, and victory, but beneath the surface, discontent spreads like cracks in a frozen lake. In small towns, mothers wait for news of sons who vanished months ago. Letters go unanswered. Officials say they are still searching. Families line up outside government offices with photographs, asking for information that never comes. In regions like Buryatia, Krasnodar, and Dagestan, protests quietly flare up, quickly suppressed but never fully extinguished. "We just want them home," says one woman, holding her son's portrait at a bus stop. "We believed everything they said. Now we don't know what to believe anymore." Independent journalists, those few who remain, tell stories that contradict the official line. They describe warehouses filled with unclaimed bodies, hospitals where wounded soldiers wait weeks for treatment, and families that receive medals instead of compensation. The gap between promise and reality widens every day. Economically, the pressure is immense. Sanctions have reshaped industries, inflation quietly eats through salaries, and local businesses close one after another. Yet the official narrative insists that everything is stable, that the nation stands strong. But perhaps the most striking change is psychological. People have stopped looking for truth in official broadcasts. Instead, they find it in whispers, in private conversations, in encrypted channels that disappear after a few seconds. There, soldiers talk about what really happens in places like Kupiansk and Avdiivka. There, videos circulate showing the faces of men who once believed they were fighting for honor, now sitting in cold, dimly lit rooms, wondering how they ended up here. "We thought we were going to be heroes," one of them says. "Now, I can't even look at myself in the mirror." In Ukraine, the mood is different but no less complex. The visit of the president to the Kupiansk direction was not only symbolic, it was deeply personal. It showed a nation that refuses to bow, even when the odds seem impossible. Behind the scenes, humanitarian groups work tirelessly to evacuate civilians, repair infrastructure, and bring life back to areas freed from occupation. Yet the cost is enormous. Cities like Bakhmut, Mariupol, and Kherson remain scars on the country's body, reminders of what was lost and what must still be defended. In Kiev, people have grown used to blackouts and air raid sirens. Yet the city lives. Cafes open, concerts take place, and laughter can still be heard in the streets. There is resilience in the air, an unspoken defiance that has become part of the nation's identity. But the fatigue is real too. Every day brings another announcement of casualties, another story of sacrifice. And every evening, as the sun sets over the Dnipro River, people ask themselves how much longer this can last. Across Europe, the war continues to reshape politics. Countries like Poland, Germany, and France debate how to balance support for Ukraine with their own domestic challenges. Western aid flows, but so does uncertainty. Uncertainty about what comes next, about how this story will end. Because it's no longer just about territory. It's about truth, dignity, and the very idea of what it means to be free. Back in Russia, the silence is no longer enough to hide what's happening. Even in Moscow, where glittering lights and grand speeches still try to project confidence, people notice the small things. The growing number of funerals, the veterans begging near metro stations, the neighbors who quietly sell their homes and leave the country. The illusion of control begins to fracture. "We can't keep pretending forever," says one anonymous official in a leaked recording. "People see it, they feel it, they just don't say it yet." And so, we return to where we began, Kupiansk, a city once divided by a river, now divided by narratives. On one side, claims of complete control, on the other, defiant resistance. Between them, the truth, fragile, contested, and constantly rewritten. The president's visit was a message not only to soldiers, but to the world, that Ukraine still stands, still fights, still hopes. But the echoes of that visit reached far beyond the battlefield, stirring unease in places that were supposed to be far from danger. Because in the end, this is not just a story about one city or one war. It is a story about how truth survives under pressure, how people cling to dignity even when everything else is taken from them, and how silence, no matter how enforced, cannot last forever. It is about the collapse of illusions and the endurance of reality, about the faces behind the slogans, the broken promises behind the parades, and the quiet voices that refuse to disappear. And as this story continues to unfold, one thing becomes clear. The world is watching more closely than ever before. The cameras may turn away, the headlines may fade, but the memory of what happened in Kupiansk, in Tolyatti, in Moscow, in every shuttered home and empty street will remain. Because in the end, no wall of propaganda can hold back the truth forever. So friends, stay with us, because these stories matter, they define the present, and they will shape the future. Subscribe to stay informed, share this report with those who still seek clarity, and remember, what we witness today is not the end, but the beginning of a reckoning that the world can no longer ignore.